Welcome to Palace Insider. The BBC just dropped something that's shaking the royal world to its core. And no, it's not another opinion piece or fluffy royal commentary. It's a straight-up documentary led by Princess Anne herself, and what it exposes has everyone stunned. Why is this such a big deal? Because for years, we've only heard one version of the royal story. One polished, media-approved narrative shouted so loudly that it became the truth for most people. But now, the very institution that stayed silent for decades is finally speaking, not with cold-press statements, but with something undeniable. Evidence. This isn't tabloid gossip. It's like a royal case file thrown wide open for the world to see. And if you think you already know the full story, every scandal, every excuse, every exclusive interview, think again, because what's coming will make you question everything. Picture this: California, a calm morning. Meghan Markle moves through her day with total confidence. Every move carefully curated. Interviews done, deals sealed, documentaries and podcasts lined up, all perfectly shaping her image in one bold direction. Her truth was the truth, or so it seemed. Meghan had mastered the ultimate power move in modern media: timing. Whoever speaks first doesn't just tell the story, they own it, they frame it, they shape it, and everyone else has to play by their rules. For years, Meghan ruled that game like a pro, until her phone started buzzing. Once, twice, again, non-stop. That kind of vibration you feel in your gut when something's gone terribly wrong before you even look at the screen. Imagine it: confidence turning to confusion in seconds, control slipping into chaos. Outside, the quiet neighborhood turned wild, the air buzzing with media vans and shouting voices desperate for a reaction. Then, the call came. Her publicist, voice trembling, no polish left, just fear. "Turn on the TV, now!" 2 words flashed across the screen. Princess Anne, BBC documentary. Here's what you need to know about Princess Anne. She's the royal family's most private member. The workhorse of the monarchy, never chasing fame, never feeding the media beast. For decades, she's lived by one golden rule: stay silent and stay steady. So when she breaks that rule, stepping into the spotlight she's always avoided, you've got to wonder, what could possibly be so serious that silence isn't an option anymore? The documentary didn't play it safe, not even close. Its title was bold, its tone sharper than anyone expected. It dove straight into long whispered claims, hidden behaviors, and incidents the palace allegedly buried for years. And then came that opening line: "The real Meghan bears no resemblance to the image she presents to the public." That's not just a disagreement. That's a revelation. Anne was basically saying, you've been watching a performance, not a person. Within hours, shockwaves exploded across global headlines. Not gossip, not speculation. Investigation. What did Meghan really do behind those palace walls? And why did Anne stay silent for so long? So what could be that serious enough to make the most disciplined royal go public? One word: archives. The so-called archive incident. The moment curiosity crossed the line into something criminal. The documentary opens exactly where every real investigation should, with a witness. Not a celebrity, not a media-hungry source, but a longtime royal staff member who's served for decades. A man the public doesn't know, but whose words matter because he has everything to lose and nothing to gain. His story is calm but chilling. He talks about a narrow corridor leading to a restricted archive, a space tied to Princess Diana herself. And if you know anything about royal history, you know Diana isn't just a memory, she's sacred ground. Anything connected to her carries emotional weight the palace guards fiercely. The witness says the door was slightly open, when it should have been locked tight. No one was supposed to be there, but someone was. Inside stood Meghan, not passing by, not lost. Inside, searching, moving fast, looking frantic like she was after something specific. Then came the shocker. Princess Anne herself said she arrived moments later, saw the door ajar, stepped inside, and found Meghan on her knees, back turned, holding a locked box in her hands. That's when this stopped being a harmless mistake and turned into an act of someone trying to access restricted royal material. A straightened paperclip, not a key, not permission. A paperclip being used to force open a royal lock. Think about that. This wasn't curiosity or a harmless mistake. This was someone trying to break into something meant to stay sealed. When Princess Anne describes this in the documentary, her voice changes. Not full of rage, but disbelief. You can almost hear her struggling to understand what she's seeing, like reality just cracked in front of her. She asked calmly but firmly, "What do you think you were doing?" And that's where it all gets darker. According to Anne's account, Meghan didn't react with shock or apology. She switched strategy. Tears, instantly. And then came the twist. She pointed at the staff member, accusing him of trying to break into the box. Claimed she was only trying to stop him. Let that sink in. A global figure caught in a restricted royal room using a paperclip to open a sealed box, and the first move is to pin it on a loyal staffer who served the crown for decades. One false claim like that could destroy his whole life. But Princess Anne didn't buy it for a second. Princess Anne saw the paperclip. She knew who was holding it. And in that instant, she made a move that would change everything. She ordered the palace security team to pull the footage immediately. Because here's the thing about modern royal estates. They're wired with cameras everywhere. And cameras don't lie. They don't care about status, sympathy, or carefully crafted PR. They just show the truth. That footage became the first spark. But the next chapter, the Balmoral recording, was where things turned chilling. If the archives scandal was about physical intrusion, this was about something far worse. Betrayal of trust. The scene? A private afternoon tea at Balmoral. Intimate, quiet. The kind of moment where royals drop the formality and act like family. Meghan, by all appearances, played the perfect guest. Listening, smiling, polite, respectful. She looked like she belonged. But Princess Anne wasn't fooled. Her eyes caught details others missed. The subtle movements, the handbag placed just so, the phone angled oddly toward the room. Then came the flash, a faint red glow, barely visible but unmistakable once you knew what to look for. A recording light, hidden, discreet, and very much on. That faint red glow wasn't random. It was familiar, the kind only someone used to security tech would notice right away. It was a recording light, clear as day. The phone lay face down, screen hidden. But that tiny reflection on the polished table gave it away. Think about what that means. This wasn't about taking notes or remembering advice. This was an active recording of the late Queen's private conversation, without her knowledge or consent. Princess Anne didn't explode or make a scene. Her discipline kicked in. She stayed calm, focused on containment, not humiliation. So she made a small move, quietly sliding her teacup to shift the angle. And just like that, the red light became impossible to ignore. Meghan reacted fast. She snatched up the phone and switched it off, instantly flashing that practiced smile, the kind meant to smooth over anything. Her excuse? She said she just wanted to save the Queen's wise words, because they were so meaningful and hard to remember. Then comes the documentary's most explosive moment, and it's jaw-dropping. It doesn't just talk about the secret recording, it plays what it claims is audio of Meghan herself, caught in the corridor right after that Balmoral tea. Her voice sounds animated, confident, and sharp, giving instructions over the phone to someone else. But here's the kicker. She's not talking about preserving memories. The audio, according to the documentary, is about production, editing, cutting clips to make them usable. That changes everything, because a recording can be chopped up, words twisted, pauses deleted, context erased. You could flip the Queen's meaning completely, making her sound like she said things she never did. That's not documentation, that's weaponization. And just when you think it can't get darker, the film pivots, from shocking moments to patterns. Because one scandal might be explained away, but a pattern? That's intent, that's strategy. Two palace employees come forward. Their stories aren't grand. They're painfully familiar to anyone who's ever dealt with manipulation at work. According to them, Meghan approached each separately, friendly and casual, then confided that the other had been bad-mouthing them, questioning their skills and loyalty. It's an old trick, triangulation, stirring up mistrust to keep everyone off balance while staying in control. Once that tension starts, communication breaks down, trust collapses, and the manipulator becomes the only safe person left in the room. The documentary calls it not coincidence, but methodology. Both palace employees later confirmed they never said a word against each other, not once. What they did describe was the awful realization that they'd been turned against one another piece by piece on purpose. Why would anyone do that? The documentary calls it strategic manipulation. If you want to paint a picture of a toxic workplace but don't have proof, you create it. Start the drama, spark the tension, then point at the chaos and say, "See, that's the evidence." That's how the documentary introduces its next chapter, the narrative machine. It dives into how modern influence really works, claiming Meghan mastered what the palace never understood: narrative warfare. Here's the contrast. The royal institution lives by old rules: dignity through silence, never argue with tabloids, let time clean the record. That used to work, back when newspapers ruled and scandal faded with the next day's print. But in the digital age, speed wins, emotion dominates. Every clip, every headline, every viral quote shapes public reality faster than truth can catch up. And according to the film, Meghan knew that perfectly. She played to the rhythm of the attention economy, where whoever controls the emotion controls the story. It's not about objective reality anymore. It's about perceived reality. And in today's world, perception is everything. That's how power and profit are built now. Not on truth, but on what feels true. Here's how the documentary breaks it down. Someone gives a raw, emotional interview, tears in their eyes, making serious claims. It spreads like wildfire online. Millions watch, share, react. The emotion hits first, and that emotion sticks. People don't analyze, they feel. Then, maybe months later, new evidence surfaces that challenges the story. But it doesn't matter. The emotional version has already taken hold. And when people connect with a story emotionally, they fight to protect it. Because admitting new facts means admitting they were wrong. And no one likes that sting. So what happens next? Any contradiction gets dismissed as palace spin or retaliation. The pushback actually strengthens the original claim because now it looks like persecution. That's the trap, the film says, that the palace fell into. By staying quiet too long, they let one version of events harden into the version. And when they finally considered speaking up, it was too late. Doing so only made Meghan's narrative look stronger, a cold, calculated strategy. And it worked. Speak first. Speak with emotion. Make people feel for you. And when anyone challenges it, claim it's proof you were targeted. That's how the documentary defines narrative engineering. And it argues Meghan didn't just stumble into this strategy. She studied it. She knew exactly how modern media rewards tears over truth and emotion over evidence. According to the film, she realized something powerful. A 5-minute emotional interview reaches more hearts, more screens, and more minds than a 1,000-page legal statement ever could. And she wasn't wrong. When her story dropped, millions believed it instantly. It was personal, passionate, and it came first. Meanwhile, the palace's old motto, never complain, never explain, suddenly looked outdated, even suspicious. Silence started to look like guilt. Then comes one of the documentary's boldest claims, the preemptive strike. It argues Meghan's big interviews and public accusations weren't about healing or seeking truth. They were tactical moves, meant to strike first. Princess Anne's account ties it back to the corridor incident, when she supposedly overheard that talk about editing the Queen's recording. After that moment, Anne says, an invisible wall went up, quiet but unbreakable, between Meghan and the rest of the royal circle. It was the kind of barrier no one could see, but everyone inside the palace felt. The documentary says it formed when trust shattered completely. Meghan, according to the film, realized what that meant right away. Eyes were on her, access was tightening, and staff were told to quietly log every interaction. The palace wasn't gossiping anymore. It was building a case. And if that case ever went public, it could end everything. Her reputation, her image, her future deals. So what do you do when you know the truth might catch up? You don't wait. You move first. You flood the media with your story, emotional, gripping, untouchable, so that when the other side finally speaks, it looks like cruelty instead of clarification. The film paints it as strategy, not breakdown. It shows how fast Meghan pivoted, from palace drama to full-blown interviews, from "I'm struggling to adapt" to "they refuse to help" to "my safety was at risk." Each claim raised the emotional stakes higher, making it impossible for the palace to respond without seeming cold or cruel. Media experts in the documentary call it reputation insurance. You build such a strong image of victimhood that if anyone dares to challenge it later, they don't look truthful, they look heartless. The documentary draws a brutal comparison, saying this kind of strategy works like insurance fraud. You stage the damage yourself, then blame someone else, and by the time anyone investigates, you've already filed the emotional claim and collected your public sympathy payout. Then the story shifts gears to the corporate calculation. That's where the now famous email comes in. The one Meghan allegedly received on that quiet California morning. Termination of cooperation agreement. And here's why it mattered. This wasn't just about image anymore. It was about money, real deals, real contracts, and real consequences. By the time Princess Anne's documentary aired, Meghan's business empire was built entirely on her public story. Streaming partnerships, publishing deals, podcasts, speaking tours, all powered by her narrative. Those companies didn't need courtroom proof. They just needed her story to feel true enough that the public wouldn't turn on them. Because in today's market, corporations don't care about moral truth. They care about brand safety. It's all about risk control. Will this person lift the company's image or drag it through controversy? And when the palace's version hit the screen, that question suddenly had a very expensive answer. When Meghan's version of events was the version, she was golden, the face of bravery, independence, and defiance. She wasn't just a public figure. She was a brand. Someone who stood up to power, spoke her truth, and inspired millions. And that image? It sold. It built audiences, moved products, and drew massive deals. But the moment a credible counter-narrative appeared, especially one backed by what looked like real evidence, everything shifted overnight. Suddenly, association didn't mean inspiration. It meant risk. Now, brands had to ask, what if the public turns? What if we're backing someone accused of manipulating the truth? The documentary claims this corporate pivot happened fast. Within hours of the broadcast, quiet moves began. Contracts paused, projects postponed, emails sent behind closed doors. No press statements, no public drama. Just a sudden, careful silence that said everything. Because in modern PR, there's one unshakable rule. You can survive controversy, but you can't survive being on the wrong side of a scandal. The film even shows media experts breaking it down, explaining how reputation in the influencer era isn't about truth or lies. It's about which story survives the storm. The analysts in the documentary call it reputation arbitrage. That exact moment when someone's market value flips from powerful to poisonous. And when it happens, it doesn't fade slowly. It crashes instantly. One expert puts it bluntly. Meghan's entire value was built on controlling the narrative. The second that control was hit with real evidence, it didn't just dip, it collapsed. That's why that California morning was so brutal, according to the film. It wasn't only about bad headlines, it was about the collapse of the entire business empire she'd built after leaving the palace. Her brand, her influence, her deals. Everything rested on one thing, her story. And if that story fell apart, so did the foundation beneath it. Then the documentary shifts into one of its most unsettling segments, the psychology of performance, when tears become tools. Princess Anne speaks directly on this point, choosing her words carefully. She doesn't claim Meghan's emotions were fake, only that she knew how to use them. The film shows what it calls a pattern, moments where Meghan's mood flipped almost instantly, depending on the audience and the stakes. Around staff, composed. Around cameras, vulnerable. Around allies, emotional. It suggests that emotion itself became strategy. A performance crafted to move hearts, win sympathy, and above all, control the story. The documentary paints a striking contrast. Meghan seen crying in confrontations, then calm minutes later. Fragile in public, yet reportedly giving sharp, calculated instructions in private. Staff accounts describe someone who could shift gears effortlessly. Vulnerable on camera, controlled off it. To unpack this, the film brings in a psychologist specializing in workplace behavior who explains strategic emotionality. When emotion isn't just felt, it's used. The expert says the feelings may be real in the moment, but they can be turned on and off with rare precision. Most people can't cry on cue or flip from panic to charm in seconds, but some can. And when they do, emotion becomes a tool, not a reaction. The documentary then re-examines Meghan's famous tearful interviews and delicate gestures, asking, were those genuine moments of pain or deliberate performances designed to inspire protection and sympathy? The idea that suffering can be performed shakes something deep in how we judge people. But the documentary insists this question is crucial. If emotion can be used strategically, then emotional testimony alone can't be taken as truth. You need proof, patterns, and facts to separate performance from reality. Then comes one of the film's most emotional turns: the witnesses who never spoke, until now. Not celebrities or insiders chasing attention, but palace staff, security guards, and admin workers. People whose entire careers depended on staying invisible. So why speak now? Their answer hits hard. Because silence stopped being protection and started being complicity. One staff member, her face blurred, describes the guilt of watching the public narrative twist reality. Seeing Meghan cry on TV about being isolated and mistreated while remembering the truth. Offers of help rejected. Guidance ignored. Loyal employees blamed for things they didn't do. I stayed quiet, she says, because that's what we were trained to do. But you can hear it in her voice. That quiet has turned into something heavier. Regret. That's the job. Stay silent, protect the family, never speak. But as one staff member says, at some point you ask yourself, is privacy worth letting lies become history? That question echoes through the testimonies. None of them sound bitter or out for revenge. They sound tired. Witnesses who finally hit a breaking point. Thomas, the employee once accused of breaking into Diana's archive, speaks softly but with weight. For years, I didn't want attention. I didn't want headlines. But if I stayed silent, who'd protect the next person? He claims Meghan often points at whoever she needs to when things go wrong. And that pattern, the film says, is what finally pushed Princess Anne to act. Anne, realizing silence no longer protected the monarchy but enabled manipulation, ordered the truth to surface. And that's where the documentary drops its evidence. Time-stamped CCTV footage allegedly showing Meghan entering the restricted archive. The video's grainy, but the figures' outline and timing, according to the film, leave little doubt. Someone was exactly where they shouldn't have been. The documentary doesn't stop at CCTV. It goes further, revealing what it claims are audio recordings. Not just the corridor conversation about editing the Queen's words, but several clips said to capture Meghan speaking with media contacts and publicists, planning how to frame palace events for maximum public impact. In one recording, a voice identified as hers discusses timing, tone, and which outlets would be most sympathetic. The filmmakers insist the audio is authenticated, though full verification would need access to the originals. Still, if genuine, it's explosive. Private conversations showing strategy, not reaction. Then come the written records, emails, texts, internal memos, allegedly detailing repeated boundary breaches and staff reports quietly piling up behind palace doors. And finally, the witnesses themselves, longtime employees from different departments, people who barely knew one another, yet all describing eerily similar events. Their stories overlap perfectly, forming one chilling pattern the palace, the film claims, could no longer ignore. Same patterns, same tactics, the same feeling that performance has swallowed reality. And now, here we are. A BBC documentary led by Princess Anne claiming to reveal proof of intrusion, manipulation, secret recordings, and calculated storytelling. Security footage allegedly showing restricted access. Longtime staff giving consistent testimonies. Audio that hints at deliberate edits. On the other side, years of interviews, emotional statements, and a global story that painted the palace as cold and cruel. But this film doesn't demand blind belief. It asks you to look, think, and decide. Can you really ignore footage? Can you dismiss multiple witnesses who have nothing to gain? Can you overlook audio that sounds like strategy, not sincerity? This isn't gossip anymore. It's a war between emotion and evidence. What happens when truth finally answers back, not with drama, but with documentation? When silence turns from protective to permissive? Princess Anne waited years for this, not to destroy a person, but to challenge the idea that whoever cries first controls the truth. So what do you think? Has this documentary changed your view or just deepened the mystery? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives from Palace Insider. The world's watching, and this story, it's still being written. See you in the next one.